Hello everyone, welcome back to my reading of Fate, Strange Fake. Now it's been a little bit since we last read. A number of things have happened. One, the first cour or season of the anime came and went, and it left us halfway through this volume, from what I've been told. Which does mean that we will know of some of the stuff that has occurred so far, which is fine. It did lead to actually letting me have some kind of big pop-offs, which I'm a big fan of. And of course, being the novel version, we'll go into a lot more detail. Things will be explained a bit more, which overall, in case you didn't watch my impressions of the anime, I came out feeling, yeah, the light novel is still the best way to experience it. It is. It is just anytime you have a version that has more information, be it a novel, a visual novel, anything like that, it'll always be the best version in my eyes. One of the other things that sort of kept my time is that I went and got the entire Fate prototype series, the Fragments of Sky Silver, all of that retranslated, and did readings of volumes 1 to 5 of those. Only started the retranslation after volume 3, but all of them got done there. As well as Fate Labyrinth, which is good because now I know about the blue telephone at the beginning. That's your boy Cowbick Alcatraz, aka Mr. Cell Phone, though in that case he was a landline, which is interesting. We learned about his granddaughter through Maho Sokai no Hako, Starlit Marmalade. We learned about that sort of situation going on. And pretty much we are in a situation where we are almost fully understanding of everything for Strange Fake, with one small exception, and that is the actual world that Strange Fake takes place in, which is the world of the manga, the Himiko manga, which same world, but not one that is in English. Now, I will say something. There is a chance, after we're done here, we'll see how things go, that I may fund, similarly, a translation of the manga there. That is something that I think is important that gets done. I literally asked the original manga person if they could ever come out in English, and they basically said, I'm not touching that anymore, so I'm sorry, it's way past the time for an English version. All I'm gonna say is, come on. I may have to not follow what they said. But otherwise, yeah, we're gonna be here with volume 6 and continuing on through as much as we can so that hopefully we'll be able to read, you know, volume 10 whenever it gets an English translation, which hopefully will be nice and quick, but no guarantees, of course. And if they release it like in small chunks, you know, a chapter at a time, then my God, we will read it like that as well. So let's get going with volume 6 here of Strange Fake. We got some... I will say, I really appreciate reading the... or rather, watching the anime to really let me get in the head of a lot of these characters, understanding who they are, understanding their voices, and you know, everything about them. I will say their designs are definitely a lot closer to the anime now than they were at the start. At the start, they were quite far, but I think at this point, the manga and stuff was coming out. Oh, it says Strange Fake 5 at the top, but 6 down here. You know what the nice thing is? A bunch of the past translation, or the readings I had to do were me doing the translation, so I'd go and I'd like have to make changes. It's kind of nice to not have to worry about that this time. This is all going on itself, you know? Anyways, Strange Fake. It's still 5 there. Okay, so let's see here. We got a prologue. The Bridge, Canon of the Demigods Act 2, Breaking Dawn and Wakeless Dreams, Mercenary Assassin, Pale Rider, as dream and reality are both illusion, Mercenary is a free man, illusion 2, A Beauty in the Sea, a girl and a mercenary. Fantasy becomes reality, a mercenary is a free man, and Clink Clank. Okay, so again, I have an idea of where we're going with this, but it is nice that we'll get more information, so let's get going. Oh, now it's 6. There was a hollow rattle. When it realized that the sound accompanied the end of everything, it thought, "Oh, it's begun." It kept waiting for a long, long time. Time was meant to be part of the system, merely one of the elements that comprised it. But it was different now. A slight uncertainty about its goal, to wait, arose in the program running inside it. It already understood that the uncertainty was a system called emotion that had been copied from the outside. At the same time, it realized that the time had finally come for it, born for the sole purpose of existing to be meaningful, in which case it had to move on to the next phase. It understood, I missed it. At the same time, it realized that the time had finally come for it, born for the sole purpose of existing to be meaningful, in which case it had to move on to the next phase. It understood okay, that's why it confused me. What it ought to accomplish was out. That's a typo. What it ought to accomplish. The greatest and final purpose bestowed upon it by its creator. The purpose for which it had been born. Oh yes, it's over. It has come to a close. I have fallen to ruin. I have arrived. I am complete. Loss was always the final piece. Following the principles of its birth, it rebooted itself, simply to achieve the objective its creator had given it. It recalculated the duty it had been tasked with. Would its path be difficult or easy? There was no point in speculating. In either case, it had no choice but to see it through. Nothing else would give it meaning. Continue to exist. Continue to exist. It need only become a true human and continue to exist in that world. Whoa. Even if that meant wiping the species defined as humans from the face of the earth. Okay, so I had a few ideas on who this is. My first thought was, what's it called? Googleana, right? But it said it need only become a true human. That's interesting. Then I thought maybe was this, the Humbaba? Because we also know that that's apparently coming. But again, I don't think the Humbaba would become a true human. So what is this? I don't know. Bridge. Canon of the Demigods, Act 2. Antiquity. Oh, we're going back in time on the shore of the Black Sea. It was a beautiful land. Dazzling sunshine lit its fields and forests, surrounded by an expanse of deep blue sea. The city-state of, I'm going to try my best on this, Themyscira. Themyscira? Sure, it's Greek. That land, named for the sacred sea, or perhaps its goddess herself, commanded a sweeping view of the fertile plains on the southern coasts of the Black Sea. On it stood a city built primarily on ocean-going trade. The city was spoken of in many tales. Some had it that it was an island surrounded by sea on all sides, others that it was a peninsula, and still others that the power of the gods enabled it to shift freely between the two. But the most important point was not the city's origin or geography, but the people that ruled it. The Amazons. That tribe, also called the Amazones. Oh, I thought that was a weird typo in FGO, but I guess that's what it actually was distinguished by being made up entirely of women, except when those who desired offspring mingled with men of neighboring cities. Hunting, agriculture, animal husbandry, and all other aspects of life were conducted entirely by women. It is only now that I'm realizing that the Gerudo from Zelda are meant to be Amazons. Wow, okay. I can't believe that took till now. They're even huge. Many took issue with that. Kings of neighboring cities and groups of brigands who made their strongholds in the mountains often attacked their city, but the Amazons beat back every assault. Not only ordinary life, but the military preparations essential to the defense of the city were managed entirely by women. Their skill in horseback riding and archery in particular were so impressive that word of it reached the cultures of distant Greece. Okay, so Themyscira is not in Greece. So where in the world is it? That's a good question. Well, DC, it mostly gives me only the DC Comics stuff. Okay, so was an ancient Greek town in West Anatolia. So where's Anatolia? Anatolia, also known as Asia Minor, makes up the land of Turkey. Oh. Okay, well, if it's by Turkey, then I guess the Gerudo aren't super far off. Okay. Interesting. Guys, I don't know much about, like, history and stuff, so this is me doing my research. Anyways, I assume at this point they are not considered the same land is what's going on. So anyways, just a moment. So, in Themyscira, there was a queen. Her mother was Otre, a devout priestess of Artemis, and a great woman who had congress with Ares, once the god of war, and despite being human, born the god's child. We're calling that Congress? Okay, sure, we'll call that Congress, sure. Otre's daughter, however, surpassed her in heroism. She was a priestess of the god of war and the queen of the people. She was also a war leader who rode in on the vanguard and kicked up a storm of blood. That young queen ruled powerfully over the surrounding lands with her might and wisdom. The divine aura and divine artifact she had inherited from the god of war, and the charisma to unite her sturdy warrior women. On horseback, it was said a sweep of her spear would part the sea, and a shot from her bow would shake the forests. Her prowess was sufficient to inspire faith in her followers and terrified awe in neighboring cities, and her fame spread to distant Greece. But a turning point came for that queen and for all the Amazons. A fateful wind carried a lone ship to Themyscira. Aboard it was a man who was hailed then in Greece, and who would be hailed by future generations as a great hero. It is said that the young queen was quite taken with him. The reason for her attraction was simple, but that's very simplicity made it complicated. It was not a sense of duty to leave mighty offspring, nor was it a lust for physical pleasure. Admiration. When the queen, who had until then known no one truly strong except the gods, saw that man, she saw for the first time a man who was a fitting match for her origin, the god of war. According to the surviving Amazons, the queen's eyes shone then like the eyes of a child who had just been told the tale of the Olympian gods, who are, by the way, giant robots. Did you know that? It's important to know that. Okay, we're good. The queen did not hesitate to grant... Oh my god, wait, did she... Okay, I assume that the giant red robot with the cool sword named Mark, who is Ares, I assume that he made a human sort of analog for Earth for that, right? Just like how Artemis does, right? I assume. I never considered that. Okay. So, the queen did not hesitate to grant that great hero, who said that he had come on the order of a king to obtain the belt of the god of war, permission to stay and to negotiate. Of course, she had not let her emotions get the better of her or decided to give up the belt without a plan. She decided to give up the belt after allowing the women of her tribe who wanted children to mingle with the heroes aboard the ship and entering into a trade agreement with the city-state to which the great hero belonged. Oh. Yeah, I'm sure the people on the ship were okay with that. Wait. If this is the ship we're thinking about... Yo, do you think... Okay, so we got, Jason. Okay. We got... Asclepius. And we got... What's his face? Is it Castor? Castor, I think, right? You think they all... Nice. I wish that was me. The fact that the king did not want the belt for himself, but because his daughter asked for it helped negotiations to proceed smoothly. The queen and her people ultimately accepted it as giving aid to a woman in a faraway land. Oh, I see. Right, that way it's helping out with a woman, okay. In the end, They came to the conclusion that forging a peaceful alliance with that great hero was worth more to the Amazon people than the war belt. Neither the queen nor her people would ever hide behind an army of men. They would not be afraid even to do battle with the great hero, but the queen was not so mad for battle that she would go to war without cause. Given that the great hero was a man, they could not accept him as one of them. By establishing a friendly rivalry between them, the queen hoped to cultivate a competitive spirit in her women and make them a stronger, more united people. Although the queen allowed her emotions to drive her as she raced across the battlefield, she also made many such political decisions. For that reason, she was known to her people as a woman of two faces, but both those faces commanded their respect. They could not say whether her policy concerning the great hero and his men was realistic based on the social conditions of the time or an impractical pipe dream. That was because it had never bore fruit. The relationship the queen had envisioned between her people and the great hero fell apart at the negotiation table just as she was about to hand over the belt, because the schemes of a goddess led to the queen's tragic death. Oh, it was a goddess's fault. Well, that's interesting. I wonder who that's going to be. Main Street Snowfield. A massive horse dashed over the broken asphalt, wearing the weaving through the thick jet black mist. There had been 4 horses at first, but one and then another had been consumed by the oncoming darkness until the hoofbeats of only one can still be heard. Even with its fellows hidden from the world, the last gargantuan horse raced through the city night as the whim of the grotesque heroic spirit on its back, Alcides, without the slightest trace of fear. But even a heroic spirit as great as Alcides had no choice but to flee. The blackness came on. The blackness came on. An overwhelming cloud of blackness was hot on Alcides' heels. Borne on the winds, borne on the air, the swayed with the leaves. I think it's just a typo. Borne on the air, they swayed with the leaves of the roadside trees. That sentence kills me. On the that blew between the buildings, and even on the despairing sighs of those who had already this sentence is killing me. And even on the despairing sighs of those that had already consumed. No, that part's okay. Alcides carried within him warped, mud-like magical energy, the color of destruction. But the shadow that pursued him embodied a different kind of darkness. Alcides had no way of knowing exactly what the black mist was. Still, all his accumulated experience and senses honed by the deadly combat he had just been engaged in told him it was no ordinary being. He could not know what would become of those engulfed by the inky blackness, but he did notice one thing. The spirit origin of Kerberos, as a part of his noble phantasm, had vanished from the area. The magical energy that linked them was not completely gone, but he could neither recall it nor dismiss it. It was as if a massive ward was slithering of its own accord in an effort to isolate him. As the dark torrent, like the Cassin? What is that? That's a Google. What is that? Cassim? Oops, I got rid of the N. Oh. Cassim, otherwise known as Chassim or Hassim, more commonly known in Egypt, Israel, and Palestine as Kahamasim, is a dry, hot, sandy local wind. Oh, it's like a Chinook. For those of you who know, it's like a Chinook, you know? You might be like, what the frick's a Chinook? Don't worry about it. Anyways, like the Cassim he had once seen in an arid region on the Mediterranean coast in life dyed black, rushed on behind him. His horse's hooves at last outpaced the black mist. There was no longer any obstacle in the way of his horse. His escape seemed simple. That instant, the faint sound of something slicing the air reached Alcides' ears. Here, the bowman turned avenger muttered, a hint of different emotion in his irritating voice. You would attack me in these circumstances. You are certainly fearless, Queen. At the same time, he knocked an arrow to his bow and, still urging on his horse, twisted his upper body and loosed it. There was a crash, and sparks shone in the night of the main street. A moment later, hoofbeats resounded through the gaps between buildings, weaving a tumultuous ensemble with those of Alkides' massive steed. So I don't think we actually see him on the horse in the anime version. A single swift horse appeared, displaying extraordinary movements. On its back rode a heroic spirit. Alkides! The woman on the horse, the rider class heroic spirit Hippolyte. I'm still gonna say Hippolyta because that's how I know her as. Also a 4-star free servant, so hey, that's nice. Shouted the moment they caught sight of each other. How dare you? Are you planning to dishonor what those brave heroes achieved by using a curse to hold back the venom? When he heard that, Alkides flashed a fearless grin behind his cloth, even while he suppressed the Hydra venom coursing through his veins with the power of the mud that had flowed into him through Bastilod. I see. That explains it. The image of the police officers he had faced shortly before flashed through his mind. Those humans, setting aside the one called John, they may have wielded noble phantasms, but I doubt many could have stood firm in the face of my strength. His torrent of magical energy should have been enough to scatter a mob of police officers. But they had remained on the battlefield and survived. They had been consumed by the black mist, and he did not know what had happened to them after that, but they had been unnaturally resilient. Or rather, some outside force had unquestionably been enhancing their meager strength. Queen. Alkides' doubts instantly came to a head as he urged on his horse with all his might, and he matter-of-factly stated his conclusion. You gave them your protection, didn't you? Oh, am I gonna call her Hippolyte? Hippolyte? Let's go Hippolyte. I can handle that. Right? Well, you know what? Let's play the game of how do you actually pronounce this? Let's see. How to pronounce. This is an important thing, right? Let's see here. That's the French version. Pronunciation in English, Cambridge. How do we do it? All right, so did some looking. Yeah, it's basically Hippolyte, Hippolyta. Those are the correct sort of ways to do it there. In French, it's Hippolyte, right? So that kind of works. Also, I learned that it literally means unleasher of horses. So like, damn, that's kind of perfect, huh? Anyways, I'll call her whatever I feel like at the moment. Hippolyte accelerated her horse and fired their next arrow in silence. Alkides deflected it with his bow. The deflected arrow flew forward and tore up a large chunk of asphalt. The Avenger's massive steed, however, trampled the chunk of is that viscous? I hate this word because I always have to think, is this vicious or viscous? I'm going insane. That is viscous. I'm just confused as to calling ash, like, okay, my only thought is, was the chunk of asphalt so heated that it turned back to, like, liquid? Sorry, it's just one of those things where I read something and I'm trying to understand it. If it was a vicious obstacle, I'd kind of get it, but no, that is viscous, right? Yeah, okay. Trampled the viscous obstacle as if it were not there and hurtled forward, always forward with all its might. Alkides flowed smoothly into a counterattack without stopping the scything motion of his bow. He knocked 3 of his own arrows at once and fired them in unison with the acceleration of his horse. The 3 arrows tore through the air, each tracing a different trajectory, closing in on Hippolyte from the front, back, and above. Hippolyte, however, skillfully maneuvered her horse and rode it across the side of a building. Running in such a way would normally be, of course, impossible. Launching out of the posture of a mountain deer walking up the wall of a dam, the swift steed continued to practically glide through the urban landscape with the force of a falcon. Horse and rider moved like a single creature. Hippolyte continued to use her bow without being shaken by her steed's movements. Paired with their blinding speed, their movements could be mistaken for a centaur of legend. The Queen of the Amazons, sometimes called the original equestrian tribe, drew a pinnacle of horse riding skill whose perfection belied her youthful appearance, which had been arrived at by a different path than perfection in the modern day. From the depths of her spirit origin as she sliced through the darkness of night, accompanied by the neighing of her steed. I'm sure that some of those officials were men, Alcides probed the Queen as his own horse rocked him. As the radiance of the Grail and the logic of war led you to abandon your pride, Queen of the Amazons. It's kind of sick. It's kind of cool. It's kind of really good. Does he doesn't have his... Does he have his horns? I'm having a hard time parsing. Okay, his horse is crazy, though. I'm having a hard time parsing him here, period. Where's his front? Is that his... Oh, I see. Okay, no, I see. We're at an angle here. This is his front is like where the X crosses over. Okay. That makes more sense. Okay. God, you do just look like Red Saber. Silence. Neither of them allowed their offense or defense to slacken even as they exchanged words. I don't know what you would wish for. Would you really forsake your way of life for the wish-granting Grail? I said silence! Hippolyte added emphasis and vexation. Alcides showered her with quiet yet forceful words. Like you did when you betrayed us? He asked, probing. The Queen's response was not an angry bellow, but silence. All expression had vanished from Hippolyte's eyes, which had been blazing with fury. Her mount was leaving the nighttime scenery behind it with the speed of the wind, but in her mind, time had stopped. The face she exposed in the dark night was devoid of expression. Or perhaps its expression had been blotted out by so many other emotions piled onto it like coals. But that only lasted a moment. Just the instant between her horse kicking the ground and its hooves striking it again. After that brief blank in which the world seemed to have frozen, the look plastered on her face was a fearless grin. Nonsense! She swiftly drew her horse alongside Alcides' gargantuan steed and brandished a long spear materialized from the depths of her spirit origin. Were you trying to test me? Then you should have put more scorn in your words, Avenger. The spear was longer than its wielder. Hippolyta was tall. She swung at Alcides, pressing him in an effort to take his life. In a flash, her noble phantasm, the war god's belt, was wrapped around her arm that held the spear. Whoa! And a thrust cloaked in divine aura shot out at Alcides' bow. Alcides countered it by immediately activating the same noble phantasm, the war god's belt, and pairing the thrust with his divine aura-clad bow. A limb of his mighty blow deflected the spearhead, and a loud crash echoed through the city night. Scattered divinity tore through the surrounding darkness and slowed the pursuit of the black mist. They clashed a second time, and then a third, and then their horses separated, and Hippolyte roared, You can't seriously believe that I would fall for a taunt like that." Their voices sounded with strange force in each other's ears despite the sounds of hoofbeats and flying arrows that filled the air. They continued to launch attacks on each other as their horses crossed paths in 3 dimensions, and the black mist closed in behind them with renewed vigor. "You're acting desperate, Alcides." Oh. Hippolyte was firing her bow at the gaps in the Nemean lion's pelt that protected him, while occasionally switching to her spear and attacking his weapon directly. It was a ceaseless rain of blows, perfectly in sync with the movements of her galloping horse. She was struggling to bridge the gap in the magical energy contained in their spirit origins with skill, but Alcides was worn down by consecutive battles and was in no condition to shake her off with brute force. Beside which, as he fended off the queen's spear thrusts, Alcides realized her strength is growing. The quantity and quality of her magical energy were clearly greater than they had been during their encounter in the ravine. Has she been temporarily boosted using a command spell? No, this isn't a momentary enhancement. The base of her spirit origin has been reinforced. I retract my insult, Queen. I imagine that your strategy was to provide your blessing to others while remaining hidden yourself and strike me while my guard was down. But you intend to tear through me head-on. Of course I do, the Queen casually shot back from astride her horse, then bellowed, Alcides! You're laboring under a misunderstanding. Oh? I have no intention of denying my sisters and my people's beliefs, whatever they may be. She built up the power in the cloth wound around her right arm, the war god's belt. She continued in a clear, ringing voice. But you could never know why my people were born. Her right arm glowed, and the divine aura that filled her body swelled explosively. She concentrated the greater part of that radiance into the spear in her right hand and channeled the remainder into her mount. The queen and her prize steed had gone beyond unity of horse and rider and become one with her weapon as well. They formed a single arrowhead, driving a ferocious blow into Alcides. Or what I truly wished for at the end of those lush, spirit-haunted plains. For an instant, the black mist had hid them completely. Then the loudest crash yet rang out and scattered it once again. Well struck, Queen. Once the black mist cleared, it revealed Alcides atop his horse, with the spear thrust into his left arm. It seems you have found an excellent master. I can see that in the short time you have either grown far more accustomed to battle, or received precise tuning. They must be impressive to be able to draw out so much divine power in this world so far removed from the age of gods. His wound, however, was far from lethal. Despite the fact that the spearhead was still embedded between his bones, the dark red mud was already squirming out to fill the hole. Alcides, what are you carrying inside you? Hippolyte asked, her face growing grim and her right hand still gripping her spear. What is that mud? Because her spearhead was still stuck in Alcides, they were naturally forced to continue riding in parallel. As Hippolyte, seeing the mud oozing from her opponent's wound, hesitated to pull back her spear for a moment, the bow swung by Alcides' right hand bit into her side. With a grunt, she hurriedly blocked it with divine energy from her belt, but the force of the blow pulled her spear free and put distance between the two horses again. Alcides checked that the mud had staunched his wound once the spear was removed, then casually declared, Who can say? But given that it adapts to my current form, it's probably part of a human. Oh. Is he implying Angrim, you the servant, basically? The next instant, a portion of the mud had overflowed from his wound, abruptly grew into a dark red surge that launched itself at Hippolyte. In which case, demigod queen, what? Know that you cannot pierce the end of man with mere divine power. The mud, the color of half-rotten blood, and distinct from the black mist, leapt to engulf Hippolyte like a mass of living slime. She and her horse avoided it just in the nick of time. But the mud, which seemed to have a will of its own, pursued Hippolyte, formed into an immense pair of viscous jaws. See, now it makes sense to be viscous, to consume her in a single gulp. It will take more than that. Hippolyte once again focused magical energy into the belt wrapped around her arm, preparing to draw in more divine energy. But as if in response, the mud suddenly burst apart. It spread out like a spider web centered on a main street intersection, becoming a cloud of muddy fumes that threatened to envelop Hippolyte and her mount from all sides. Faced with what looked like a forest of black trees closing in from every direction, Hippolyte, aware of the dangers, began to fuse her own spirit origin with the belt when... Okay, I don't know who her master is. With my command spell, I order you. Master? A voice sounded within Hippolyte, going beyond telepathy and speaking directly to the nature of her noble phantasm. What the frick? Draw the dragon from the ley lines and release it with divine might. There's a dragon in the ley lines? The next instant, magical energy welled up from her surroundings, from the sacred ground of Snowfield itself, and was drawn into Hippolyte's goddess of war. Suddenly, rainbow-colored radiance lit the darkness of night. It was not only her noble phantasm. The magical energy contained within the heroic spirit herself swelled explosively. With an immense torrent of light with her at its center, she blasted away most of the oncoming mud. When the blinding light subsided, and Hippolyte surveyed her surroundings, the mud, the black mist, and even Alcides were nowhere to be seen. Realizing that he had taken the opportunity to withdraw, Hippolyte gritted her teeth. Are you trying to say I'm not even worth settling things with? Once Hippolyte's anger had subsided, she turned to the empty air and spoke. She was communicating telepathically with her master. Master, one of your valuable command spells. She began to protest but was unable to continue. No, thank you, Master, and I apologize. It seems I still wasn't strong enough. The recoil she had suffered and the twisted magical energy of the mud that had almost flowed back on her the moment she had blown it away with her command spell-boosted spirit origin had convinced her. As things stood, I wouldn't have been able to stop it. She was able to surmise that it would have been impossible for her to completely shake off the mud mingled with Alcides' blood and an immense quantity of magical energy without the aid of a command spell. And if that mud had done anything to her, she was sure it would have been dire. She believed that her master, observing her from a distance, had used the precious command spell to save her because her master had taken it more seriously than she had. Even if my master used up all 3 command spells, I doubt I would ever want to rebel. Okay, so real question. Has this ever been a thing? Like, they always say, like, oh, you use up all 3 command spells and your servant will kill you on the spot and, like, that's it, right? But I feel like, has that ever actually happened? We're always warned about it, but I feel like anytime you see a master use all 3 command spells, they have such a good rapport, that's the word I'm looking for, with their servant, that they're like, no, I won't kill you. You know, we'll work together and I'm not going to kill you. I don't know. Anyways, Hippolyte harbored no dislike for the being who was her master. The being? Wait, that's interesting. There were points on which they disagreed, but her master was worthy of riding alongside. But for that very reason, she felt indebted to her master for needing the help of a command spell in battle with an opponent tied to herself. The cityscape after Alcides had departed and the black mist had rolled back. Hippolyte stroked her horse's neck as she surveyed her surroundings. She had already left Main Street and put a considerable distance between herself and the hospital from which the black mist had burst. As the sky began to lighten, she sensed the townspeople who had been kept away beginning to stir near the hospital. In any case, I can't keep fighting like this. Let's start over, Master. Hippolyte telepathically announced and remounted her horse. You ran well, Callian. Let's rest with Master. Okay, so Master must actually be in the city, which makes sense, but we haven't seen them, so. Hippolyte called her horse's name with a peaceful expression, then dematerialized and slowly set off back to the stronghold where her master was, taking out-of-the-way side streets. The retreating figures of the girl and horse were seen by several people before they dematerialized. Because casinos and other businesses occasionally employed horses for publicity, no one paid them much mind. They assumed Hippolyte's clothes must be a promotion for some kind of event and continued on their ways. It's so funny being in knockoff Las Vegas that they're just like, yeah, we saw someone who looks like a servant, who cares? They're just advertising the freaking casino. That's so funny. The people of Snowfield could no longer afford to waste energy on such minor oddities. People who were supposed to have left the city inexplicably returned, saying that they did not want to leave. A mysterious disease was running rampant among animals. Terrorists had attacked the police station. Then there was the gas pipeline explosion in the desert, the damage caused to the city by a freak windstorm, and the fire in the factory district. It was one disaster after another, and everyone who checked the news or weather all suspected the same thing, that the enormous hurricane that had the western United States in an uproar which had formed without warning, was supposed to be heading straight for the region of the country, would make a beeline for Snowfield. All this could not be coincidence. That something was happening in their city. They had no proof. If they wrote about it online, the responses from people in other areas were full of comments like, talk about bad luck and you guys must be cursed. This is the most real. This is the most real thing. Holy crap. Just having people on Reddit going like, yeah, whatever, man. The fact that there had been few deaths was part of the reason, as were the efforts of the government agency to conceal any eye-catching damages, but unease was still growing among Snowfield's residents. Still, the situation had not deteriorated to the point of panic and rioting. The countless suggestions and wards built into the city at its inception restrained such impulses. Even so, they were approaching their limit. The faces of those who sensed how bad their situation had become were beginning to show signs not of resistance but of resignation. They had no idea what was going to happen. The unease just swirled in the depths of their intuitions, a feeling that the town called Snowfield would soon be coming to an end, and that their lives and those of everyone else would be dragged into it. Okay, in the sky. We're going up to see what's up with the Prelades. A massive airship flew through the power of magecraft at a normally unattainable altitude. Inside the blimp, which doubled as the workshop of Francesca, a mage who was among the masterminds of the fake Holy Grail War in Snowfield, the mage girl observed the events on the ground alongside Francois Prelade, the caster she had summoned. Francesca had been using Francois' illusion skill to deceive spatial distance and observe the battle in front of the hospital as if it were unfolding right in front of her without relying on familiars. However, well, that's weird. What's wrong? Caster asked, stuffing his face with pumpkin pie. There's a lot of funny stuff going on, his master, Francesca, answered with an air of confusion. I mean, I'm happy that unforeseen things are happening, but not knowing the answers makes my head feel all fuzzy, you know? You sure are selfish. Just what I'd expect from me. Caster, Prelade, replied with raucous laughter. Francesca ignored him and continued to think aloud. That Amazon Queen's spirit origin is higher quality than it was at the time I saw her in the ravine. Her fortune's about the same, but her physical abilities and her inner magical energy maybe have gone up by a full rank. Wow, can that happen? I never expected to see a servant grow during the war. It can, if they get a boost from an injection of magical energy. Do you think her master? Little Doris. Who the frick is Doris? Is it just someone new? You think her master, Little Doris, has finally taken reinforcement magecraft into forbidden territory? Maybe putting her lifespan and even her crest on line to enhance her own magic circuits by force? Okay, so it's just someone new. Okay. I don't know, I'm just surprised we're adding in new people this late in the game, it feels. Whoa, that Queen's master is on our side, right? Oh, wait, huh. She should have known the Grail's a warped fake. She'd have to be crazy to still risk her life for it. Prelade seemed to have taken an interest, but because he wiped the pumpkin cream from around his mouth with a handkerchief and turned around to look at Francesca. Well, we won't get to find out if it can approach a third magic or not until all's said and done. But considering how much magical energy is involved, it should be able to grant some pretty high-quality wishes. Oh wait, no, I've got this backwards. That was him there. Okay. Yeah, that was him. Whatever. Oh, who cares? It's more fun if they really struggle instead of going down easily. I mean, we've got a real upset on our hands with a top contender like Gilgamesh going down. Francesca suddenly decided to accept the situation and burst out laughing. Anyway, Prelade asked her, I'm more interested in that black mist that came out of the hospital. What was that? Who knows? Who knows? That stuff's not normal. Should we do something? What would you do in my shoes? Panic and cry that you're confused and scared? Well, if I didn't know, I guess I'd say, who knows? But seeing a gender swap me crying her eyes out might be surprisingly hot, so why not give it a try? What the frick? Buddy, you what? Oh, are they on the side of, I'd, with myself if gender bent? Okay, fair enough. I completely agree, but it'd be a pain, so only if I feel like it. Right now, I've got no clue what's going to happen, so I want to enjoy it to the max. She brushed off Prelati. What was he doing? What was he doing? And went on wondering aloud. Still, little Tsubaki ending up as a master was a funny accident, but I'd like to know what kind of heroic spirit she summoned. I mean, it seems like it whisked a bunch of people off to who knows where, you know? And that girl, Harui, right? My organs ached with joy when she summoned a monster, but she wasn't very exciting today, was she? I mean, it's no fun having people do whatever they feel like where I can't see them. At that point, Francesca narrowed her eyes, and her smile took on a wicked air as she muttered. And that little bloodsucker coming and going as he pleases is just a little unpleasant, don't you think? Meanwhile, in the dream. Okay, so that is young Jester. It looks like quite a lot have been drawn into this world. I wonder what will happen now. The hematophage in the shape of a young boy, Jester Karchur, the mage who was technically Assassin's master, used his power to switch his body to his boy form and gloated over the city from atop a building. If Miss Assassin sides with this world, she'll make enemies of the police. Not that they were friendly to begin with, Jester muttered to himself, chuckling. If she sides against this world, she'll have to kill little Tsubaki, who she fought so hard to protect. Yes, it won't hurt me whatever way it goes. This is a holy Grail War, Jester continued with a wicked grin at odds with his youthful appearance. Everyone around you is an enemy. Everyone! Soon, a hint of ecstasy crept into his smile and he spread his arms, wide in ecstasy. Jester continued to express his joy in the world, as if trying to take the blue sky, in which the sun had fully arisen on himself. Oh, yeah, I guess you can totally in a dream world you can touch the sky, right? Yeah. Only I, your master, can be your ally, Miss Assassin. And so, Jester was drunk on his own ecstasy, but he was overlooking something. A single abnormality that had occurred in that world. Not even Tsubaki's servant, Pale Rider, had noticed it. Beneath the Kuraoka's residence, something else was being born. Beneath the house, a mage's workshop larger than the basement. Beneath the house, a mage's workshop larger than the basement had been constructed. Around a certain catalyst that had been carefully preserved in its center, an abnormality was manifesting. Perhaps it ought to be called an apparition. At the very least, it was no one's servant. Why? It was a being that might have become one, but no magical energy linked it to anyone. It had probably risen in response to some influence and would soon disappear. It was cloaked in red garment, causing quivering water droplets to drift about it. Why am I here? It had clean-cut features and a strange androgynous figure, but it did nothing in particular. It only wavered in that spot. Zhang, for the moment. So yeah, I know who that is, because we saw them in the anime, and I was like, who the frick is that, right? Okay, so this is chapter 2, so we're going from page... How much is it? Is it... Because these chapters are pretty long, right? Yeah, that's twice as long as what we read already. So, okay, in that case, we will be continuing on with Chapter 17, Breaking Dawn and Wakeless Dreams. We'll continue on then as we continue our journey through Strange Fake Volume 6. I don't know how many, depending on how I'm feeling, I might do 1 chapter, 2 chapters, but considering it's a start here, I don't know, I thought I'd just get this out quicker with one quick one there, and then we'll continue on next time with maybe 1, maybe 2 chapters. We'll see. Thank you all for watching, guys. We'll see you then. Ciao. Yo.